Somewhere on your body right now, there's a scar. Whatever it is, it healed. Your skin was opened and then it closed again, and your body did that on its own. 4,000 years ago, someone bet their life on it. There is a man sitting very still in the daylight, and a second man is standing over him holding a small bronze blade. The first man has a hard swelling on his scalp, an abscess that has been growing for days, tight and hot and impossible to ignore. The second man is the one people in the city send for when something has to be cut. He has looked the swelling over. He has decided it can be opened. And now he sets the edge of the bronze against the skin, and the first man grips his own knees and braces. We don't know what, if anything, he's been given for the pain. There's no evidence of anything in his world that could reliably carry a person unconscious through an operation like this. He may be awake for all of it. This is happening around 4,000 years ago. We tend to imagine the ancient world as a place with no medicine, just prayer, herbs, and dying young. But under that bronze blade is something a lot more surprising. Skilled, deliberate surgery. People who cut into the human body on purpose to fix it, and who sometimes succeeded. So let's talk about what going under the knife actually meant in an age that didn't even have the word for it. Because it didn't. Our word surgery comes from an old Greek word that just means handwork. And it was invented long after the man with the abscess was dust. In his own world, there was no such thing as a surgeon. Not as a separate job you could train for and hang a sign about. The person who cut you was the same person who treated your fevers and mixed your medicines. Healing was one craft, and cutting was just one of the harder things that craft sometimes required. In Mesopotamia, that healer usually came in one of two kinds, and often you'd see both. There was the asu, the practical healer, the one who knew the herbs, dressed the wounds, set the bones, and, when it came to it, picked up the knife. And there was the ashipu, the healer who worked on the unseen side of illness, reading the signs to understand what a sickness meant, and reciting the words against it. They were not rivals. The same person, even a king, might be treated by both at once. One man tending the body, the other tending everything around it. But when there was cutting to be done, it was the asu and his blade. And he belonged to a real, established profession. Some of the medical knowledge of his world was preserved in writing, on clay tablets packed with cases and symptoms and treatments. Much of the practical craft, the part that mattered when a blade was actually in your hand, was almost certainly passed on the way it always has been. Learning from an experienced healer, watching, assisting, and eventually working alone. We can't reconstruct a Bronze Age medical school as neatly as we might like. But this was not a village elder guessing with a knife. This was a trained healer, working inside a tradition thousands of years old. So what was in his hands? The clearest tool we can name is the karzilu, a bronze lancet, sharp enough to make the serious incisions described in Babylonian law. A small blade of the same metal the whole age was named for, made for cutting flesh with intent. Not a repurposed kitchen knife. An instrument, named and known for exactly this work. And the work this tradition could do is more than you'd expect. Across the Mesopotamian medical texts, we find procedures described. Draining abscesses like the one on our man's scalp, drawing infected fluid from inside the chest, cleaning and dressing serious wounds, setting broken bones back into alignment so they'd heal straight. Some of those manuscripts were written down later than our opening scene, so we can't drop every one of them directly onto that table. But they preserve a tradition in which cutting was a deliberate, considered treatment, not a desperate stab in the dark. Then there is what they did to the skull. In the Syrian city of Ebla, archaeologists found a skull from around 1650 BC, the Middle Bronze Age. And in the front of it, someone had cut a large, clean quadrilateral opening deliberately removed with a blade. This is trepanation, opening the skull itself on purpose, cutting a window into a living person's head. The man whose skull it was, somewhere between 45 and 55, lived. The bone around the opening had grown back. New bone, healing in around the edges of the hole, which only happens over a considerable period of time. Someone cut into his skull nearly 4,000 years ago, and he got up and he went on living long enough for his own body to start sealing the wound. It wasn't always a happy ending. More than a century later, in the wealthy city of Megiddo, archaeologists found two brothers buried beneath the floor of their family home. And one of them had a neat, angular hole cut into his skull, so fresh and sharp the researcher said she'd never seen anything like it. This time, the bone had not healed at all. That brother died shortly after, within days, maybe hours. Both brothers had been seriously ill for a long time. Whether the surgery killed him or was simply a last desperate attempt to save a man who was already dying, the bones can't tell us. Two skulls. One man healed and lived on for years. One man didn't. That is exactly what real medicine looks like. It works sometimes and fails sometimes, and both were already true 4,000 years ago. And there's the thing we keep skipping past, the pain. They had medicines, drinks, plant preparations of all kinds. What we don't have is any clear evidence that a Bronze Age healer could reliably put a patient under, send them unconscious, and keep them there through an operation like this. Many of these procedures may have been endured awake, or with little more than being held down and whatever limited relief was on hand. Whatever they felt, they likely felt a great deal of it, and even surviving the blade wasn't the end of the danger. The real killer often came after. Infection, setting into the wound in the days that followed, in a world with no germ theory, no antibiotics, and no reliable way to keep a wound clean. They could see a wound going bad. They had very little power to stop it once it did. If the body could fight it off, you lived. If it couldn't, you died, days after the operation itself had gone perfectly. There's a limit to what we can know here. We have their tools and their tablets and their healed bones. What we don't have is the feeling of it. How much they dreaded it, whether they trusted the healer, what they told themselves while they waited. That part didn't survive. We can see the hole in the skull. We can't hear what the man was thinking while it was made. But we do know one more thing, and it's about the person holding the knife, because he was taking a risk too. The law of the time put a price on both his success and his failure. And, tellingly, that price depended on who the patient was. For a free man of full standing, the law was terrifyingly direct. If a healer opened his flesh with the bronze lancet and healed him, saved his eye, say, the healer earned 10 shekels of silver. But if that same operation killed the man, or destroyed the eye it was meant to save, the punishment was written down just as plainly. They cut off the healer's hand. For a patient who was enslaved, the sums and the stakes were different. A reminder that in Babylon, even your body's worth was set by your rank. Sit with that for a second. The man with the abscess was gambling his body on the blade, and the man holding the blade was gambling his hand. Both of them, patient and healer, had something they could lose on that table. It made surgery a decision nobody took lightly, which may be exactly why, when it happened, it was done as carefully as their world knew how. It was a bronze blade and a steady hand. It was a trained healer working from written knowledge, doing real procedures, draining, setting, dressing, and sometimes cutting into the skull itself. It was endured awake, survived sometimes, and not others, and shadowed afterward by an enemy nobody could see. And it was a thing both people in the room were brave to attempt at all. Surgery in the Bronze Age wasn't clean, and it wasn't painless, and it wasn't safe, but it was surgery. And somewhere in a Syrian city 36 centuries ago, a man let another man cut a window into his skull, and then he healed and lived and carried that squared-off patch of new bone around on his head like a door that had been opened and closed again.